My name is Debbie Anker. I'd like to welcome you to this keynote session at SPAA. It's my great pleasure to introduce Matthew Weiner, who has accomplished what I think could be described as any television producer's dream. With Mad Men, he's created, developed, written and produced a wildly successful, critically acclaimed series that's won a passionate following. I'm assuming that many of you here today think as highly of the series as I do. Good. The series has won a swag of awards, and in a way it's helped to define and redefine the television landscape, which is an amazing achievement, I think. He's also secured for himself that rare and desirable thing called creative control, which I hope to get into shortly. Apparently, the American system works that you begin as a staff writer, you become a story editor, which is there lower on the hierarchy than I think we're used to here. You become an executive story editor, a co-producer, and then a producer. Finally, I guess, an executive producer and a showrunner.
Supervising producer. So it goes co-producer, producer, supervising producer, co-executive producer, executive producer.
While he was working on Becca, in between the second and third seasons, he wrote the pilot for Mad Men. And on the basis of that, got a job as a writer and producer with David Chase on The Sopranos. And he worked on The Sopranos for its last 3 seasons. His series, Mad Men, which began in a Madison Avenue advertising agency in 1960. It debuted on the AMC network, at that stage a little-known American cable channel that screened movies. It was the network's first scripted series. Mad Men's debut in 2007, I guess in our language, it wasn't a Monty to be a hit. It was a period drama with a cast of little-known but intriguing actors. It brought a welcome sense of style to television drama. It put a little-known small cable channel that hadn't previously commissioned a scripted series onto the map. And it demonstrated, alongside series like The Sopranos, The Wire and Deadwood, that scripted drama done well is a valuable and viable proposition. I could take up an enormous slab of this session detailing exhaustively the number of awards that Mad Men has won, from the Directors Guild, from the Screen Actors Guild, the Writers Guild, the Golden Globes, BAFTA. Mad Men has won 2 consecutive Emmy Awards for Outstanding Drama. This year it received 4 out of the 5 possible nominations for writing. When he accepted the Emmy Award for writing, for the final episode of the 2nd season, Meditations on an Emergency, Matthew thanked AMC and Lionsgate and said, "I may be the only person in this room who has complete creative freedom." So I'd like to start by asking him, what does that mean and how do you get it?
It means what it says it means. I basically, from the beginning of the show, the network had never made a show before, and it's how do I explain this? Basically, there was a power vacuum, and I sucked up all the power because I realized that, I kind of knew how I wanted to do it. They were smart people. They were giving me money to do the show. I was very respectful of that, but I had an idea of how it worked, and I had been on The Sopranos for 3 seasons, which is partially why they even read the script. And, it comes down to a series of battles. So anyway, the biggest battle that really sort of defined the relationship was John Hamm. We did a talent search, and I told them from the beginning, which was very appealing to them initially because it meant we had no money. that I really wanted to populate this show with the highest quality actors I could get, and I was not interested in trying to get a big star attached to it. So anyway, this is taking too long, but basically what happened is we auditioned him. I went through a few paces with him. They pre-read him. He came into the first audition. I turned to them. I said, "That's the guy." I had what I think is the secret of my casting process, which is an intuitive experience about this person. I also had what I thought was the most definitive rule, which was I felt at the end of the show you would not hate him when he went home to his wife, which is really just a quality that you're talking about as a human being. And so they had never said in any of the process whether they were going to do the typical network casting call where you have to bring in two people you don't want with the person you do want, and you have to fool them, and they have to read in front of the network, and everybody sits back and goes, "I think we need to read him again," and they do this with gigantic stars. I was on a show where they brought Don Rickles in. I don't know if he is. He's a very famous American comedian, 75 years old, and we were sort of like, have lunch with him if you want to see if he's alive. If you don't know what Don Rickles does, you're just embarrassing yourself. But anyway, so they didn't say any of this stuff. So I sort of said, you know what I'll do? I'll send you my top 2 choices on all of these people. And they sort of got excited about that, and we were going. And Don, the whole show hinged on Don. And they started intimating that they wanted me to hire a British actor because this was the flavor of the United States at this point. It still is. And I read some Australian people and some New Zealanders and all kinds of people trying to affect American accents, and some of them can do it. I didn't know Anthony LaPaglia was from here, but most of them can't. And the same way you don't want to hear Meryl Streep, talking about a dingo, we really don't want to hear that. I don't know why it's all on American TV, but they think that we're retarded. I was watching a play on Broadway where it was a brother and sister, and the brother had an English accent and the sister didn't. And I was like, what? I wanted to stand up and say, we can hear that. And I also said, Don Draper's big secret is not that he's English. And they were willing to spend real money on this. So anyway, I sent it in. They didn't like John. They didn't think he was sexy. That was what they thought. He was not sexy. And they also said, is he the best person available, or is he the best person for the role? And they also said something which I usually would have reacted to very angrily, but it kind of hit me in my gut, which is, he's just some guy with a bunch of shitty credits. And I was in the van, we were scouting, and I said, so am I. This is show business. What are you talking about? What does he have to be this person? So we don't find him sexually attractive. Okay, so I guess there's something wrong with me. This is a woman, so I can't argue. A woman and a gay guy who are the two people. I think that the guy who was in charge, he had just come out, but I think he thought John was sexy, but he was deferring to the female executive. So we flew John Hamm out to New York on airline miles, and we sent him to drinks with them. No one else went. I did not go. And I got a call the next morning that they found him charming. No kidding. And they said that they were calling me from 3 different points in the universe because they were constantly going on vacation, even though we were about to shoot in 5 days. And they said they'd never done it before. They were very relaxed. I got to say, they showed up on the first day of shooting. They're like, "Wow, you really put it together." I'm like, "Yeah, we did." I had a great producer, but I appreciated that hands-off thing. But it was also kind of terrifying. But anyway, this is taking a long time. But it's got a happy ending. Obviously, you know the ending. So anyway, so they said, "Look, he doesn't audition well. That's fine. He definitely seems charming, but we're going to have to talk about the way he acts. He has this sitcom thing with this soap opera thing with this gravelly voice and this false intensity." And I was like, whoa. We're going to talk to the director and talk about how we're going to work with him and the director and see how. I said, no. You are not going to do anything like that because I sold you this script for $30,000 because I was going to have creative control. I did not do any rewriting on it. You found it the way it was. You had nothing to do with how it came together. And they're like, oh. They start getting angry. Hold on. So it's my way or the highway? I said, you are VIPs on my set. You are my audience. You are the most educated, intelligent audience. I want to know what you think. But if you're going to stick your fingers in this thing, I don't want to do it because I wrote it 4 years ago and it's very dear to me and it will break my heart. And there was a silence. They're like, okay, all right, okay, well, we'll talk. We'll talk at the table read. So I hang up, and I'm like shaking, and my manager says to me, I call him afterwards, I tell him what I did, and he goes, well, you better send drinks, liquor to these people, and flowers, and I said, you know what, I'm a dad. I've just laid down the law. I got to be consistent about this thing. Let them sit. This is a punishment. I mean business. And I was shaking a little bit, because I was running the gauntlet, and I really wanted to do it. And so I called David Chase to basically brag about what big balls I had. And I said, because I emulated him. Of course, I'm emulating somebody. When I came to The Sopranos, it was making $1 billion a year. The man could behave that way. I hadn't done anything yet, but I was behaving that way. And I said, this is what I did, and I told him the story, and he listens for a second, and he goes, better be good. And I was like, that's not what you were supposed to say. So that was the beginning of a process that as the show went on and on and on, and you can't threaten to quit and not mean it. They knew I meant it. Now, they had already spent one of the $3 million on the pilot, and they were kind of pregnant, and really, I did have more leverage. And then as the show started to succeed, I got more and more leverage. But, I always said, you know what? I'm going to go home. I don't feel well. I'm going to go home, get someone in here to do this. Because it is, you think that you care more about the show than I do? I won't have this argument with you. And also, it sounded kind of shitty, but I was like, of all of us in the room here, who's been on a successful TV show? And so they kind of let that go.
Was that one of the...
I stopped giving them outlines, and it got very stressful to the point where finally in the second season, they started saying, well, here's your notes. We would like this, and we would like that. And I was like, everything that you suggested last year that you didn't like turned out to be the audience's favorite stuff. Well, I know, but, we have to worry about the audience. We have to worry about this. And, you don't always think about that. It's not always that clear. I'm like, you know what? Give me all the notes you want. I'm putting them on the DVD.
And did you?
I didn't have to because they actually behaved themselves, and because also I don't want to be this megalomaniacal person. I need an audience. I need criticism. I just don't need the specifics. And also, it's delivered in such a disrespectful way, honestly. I've been working, you heard my resume, You can't write me a note when you're an executive that says we could do better here. You can't do that. I'm an artist. It's like, I literally looked at it and I was like, go ahead, do fucking better. I don't like this is better. Be more funny is better.
How do you know who to trust? You've talked about your co-executive producer, Scott Hornbacher. You've clearly surrounded...
He's an executive producer now, and he actually directed an episode this season.
And you've surrounded yourself, it seems, with people who are of like mind, who share a vision.
Here's the beauty of it is that, and this is the irony, and no one knows this from the inside, but my wife will vouch for this. I fight with these people constantly. And I am as dictatorial as I am in my opinions. I am completely malleable. I sway in the wind. So there is a creative relationship. Arguing with me, unfortunately, because of the way I was raised, is intimacy. And we are a family like that. There's a lot of what are you talking about? Of course he's going to say that. I give them stuff very, very early. I give my production designer outlines before I've written the scripts that are very, very early. And I say, I think I'm going to need something like this. I think this is going to be in more than one episode. And it's the only way we can do the show. We shoot it in 7 days, which is remarkable. You see what it looks like. Mm. And the actors are incredibly prepared. People come in, they know their lines. There's very little rehearsal. There's very few takes. There's a lot of really concentrated prep, but that prep involves a lot of me pitching the story to these people, cornering people in the bathroom, going into their offices, them coming to me and saying, why are you doing this? This is ugly. I'm like, I want it to be ugly. Well, did you think about this? And we talk about all these reasons all the time. And that, I am their great audience. I always say, I don't know how to do your job. I am not a production designer. I'm not a costume designer. I tell them if I want a fur coat in the scene, I want a fur coat in the scene. And sometimes I say it looks like this. But Janie Bryant will still come to me and say, that kind of fur coat didn't come out. Or, she should be in a white fur coat because the room is yellow. Or something like that.
So
She's from Tennessee.
When you have that discussion, when I've read you'd imagined a particular Don Draper wearing a particular sort of watch that you then discovered was not released until 3 months after the pilot was set, so you had to get rid of the watch. If you really like that watch...
My property master, the first season, was not a stickler for detail. And there were a lot of mistakes made. Like finding out that watch didn't work out. And just to tell you my obsession and how deeply this thing was rooted in my life, I wrote it now, I realize, 10 years ago. So stick to that. How long does that take? And it's only delayed here by a year, so it was a really long trip. But also, I bought a watch. I hadn't even written the script yet. I bought this watch and I said, my character's going to wear this watch. This is like a beautiful watch, and this is what he's going to wear. And I imagined it in my mind, and I had this watch, and I wore it sometime, and so when I shot the pilot, I put the watch on him, and it was this incredible experience. And then, literally 3 episodes into it, I found out the watch didn't happen yet. So I did not digitally repair it, which I would do now, maybe if it was 1 episode, but I got rid of it.
So is the accuracy more important than the idea, or does the idea carry it? If that's the way you see it, should you go with that anyway? Or if they say, look, that watch wasn't released till 3 months later, you ditch it?
Sometimes, I would, the accuracy is the most important, but where this real detail comes in, because people, look, on every set, they say to you, what kind of lamp do you want? I'm a person I will have a conversation. They'll come to me and say, a lot of people with my job don't talk to anybody. They just write, and they're like, well, I'm going to make it look like this, and the director has a big say in it maybe, but they're only there for 10 days, so the people in the departments will be sort of left on their own, and as far as I'm concerned, that tool for telling the story is underutilized. But they'll come to you and say, what kind of lamp do you want? And I'll say, well, what kind of lamp would they have? And they'll say, well, it's probably one like this or like this. And I'm like, oh, I love that one. And then they'll come back and say, I can't get that one, and we'll use the other one. But that meeting will happen no matter what. Just happens, let's get the right one. Now, sometimes I have something very specific in mind, like a walkie-talkie with a long antenna. And they have to find it, and they have to make sure it exists. But what I really, really have most of the control over is the physical gestures. Trying to explain to someone this motif that was in the 2nd season, where Don would be sitting somewhere and a woman would be walking towards him in slow motion. And to me, this was about the gaze, G-A-Z-E, which is it's an intellectual concept of objectification. But what I really wanted to do was talk about how people see each other. And there were moments where people were both romantic to Don, where he would sort of go into this trance, and you were realizing he was really looking at this person. It wasn't for the audience, it was for Don. And I could not translate this to the directors. I would always end up with some shot with them walking from the side or walking up down the stairs or whatever. And I said, don't you understand? I want them looking right in the lens, coming right at us. And they're like, it's going to make people uncomfortable. And I'm like, I know that. And they would not execute it. And a couple of them don't work there anymore. But that's the kind of thing where you're just sort of like, and I can't afford to reshoot anything. That's the stuff that I'm very specific about. So you're telling, that's my movie storytelling, It's like, you have to trust me. I know it's weird. And if they think of something like that and they want to do it, in episode 5 of season 3, or in the Jet Set episode, Phil Abraham, who was the cinematographer early on, this guy, he and Chris Manley together, who is our DP, they come up with some things, and they're always, like all great creative decisions based on having no time and no money, that are they're just delightful surprises. And I get the dailies back and I watch the show and I'm like, how do they do that? God bless you. I'm like transported. So that I want people to be creative, but they shouldn't pick the moment that I was very specific about to do something different.
So if it's a question of we need to get from here to here, but we don't really have the money, you need to find something terrific to do. At that moment, you want to be surprised by
it's not always, there's no mathematical thing for it. I always want to be surprised with if I write When you start writing a script that you know is going to be shot, your language changes. You do not have to say, you don't have to cheat as much because there's no executive reading it who has to be, bless you, who needs to be told he's never felt this way before. This is the last time they will speak. I'm like, this is not a novel. I can't shoot that. I cannot shoot that. This is a blueprint. And every sentence is a shot. And do not cheat. Do not tell me in the description what's going on dramatically. Show it to me. Dramatize it. And we do that. We get to do that on the show. So if I've been, and sometimes I'm very specific. I'm like the camera, I direct on paper. And it's a very specific thing that's come to me. I've had this dream. I know the song that's playing. I hopefully can afford it. I know what the actress looks like. I wanted her to be Japanese, but we ended up with someone Chinese. You know, these kinds of things. And then those are those moments. But there's room all over the script to economically cover things. And especially TV directors, you're talking about a very special breed of animal in the United States because no one grows up wanting to be a director and work for a writer. It's just not, they want to be a director. And they work for me. And I'm a writer, I'm an executive producer, and they want to please me. And sometimes their bread and butter is leaving the show with the actors liking them. That's very important. The cast has to have enjoyed working with them. And giving me a lot of coverage, which actually I don't really care that much about. I don't mind them sort of going out on a limb and getting the performances right. And getting those moments right that I've been specific about, but also there's a personal artistry to it, and they always focus on the transitions between the scenes. Like, you know, they'll go in on a glass of water, and then, you know, you'll cut to the next scene, and there'll be a glass of water usually or something. And I try and write those things because I like to have the editorial energy because there's very little action in the show. So I don't like to waste the time with these languid camera moves that don't add to the story.
You're also not afraid of silences, though, are you? Which is unusual in television.
No, I love the silences because hopefully when you're watching them, there's action going on. Those things that on my show, when the phone rings and someone doesn't answer it right away, that's action. And, you know, I have my own definition of it, but, you know, someone leaves the water running in the sink, that's action. You know, that's action on the scale that we live in. You know, not many of us get to draw our gun too often.
Yeah. You've got the wonderful feeling, I think, of creating something that you've nurtured for years. And when the pilot was finally shot, you said to me yesterday, and I've read you saying before, that was what I wanted. That
it was transcendent. I walked onto the set and I saw all this stuff, the desks and the makeup and the people, and I made them up, you know. It was, you know, my wife's an architect, and I always say, like, what's it like to go into a building that you drew? What's it like to go into human experience like that? And, you know, there was lots of stuff that I hadn't thought of on some level, but when I got there, I was just like, this is it. This is a 3D world. I'm in a time machine.
How much, given that you lived with those characters for so long and you were so invested in that pilot, how much did your sense of those characters change once you cast the roles and you saw what some of those actors could do with them?
I had way lower expectations than what ended up. I mean, they're just, you see them on there, you know. Elizabeth Moss was the second person to read for the show. I had this guy come in, he wasn't so great for Don, and then I had her come in, and I'm not lying, I got up, I went to the men's room and started crying. Because I'd never heard it read, and everybody heard it was good, and it was kind of legendary because I had broken this enormous barrier going from sitcoms to The Sopranos. You know, everyone was like, what did he do? Who did he blow? And I was like, I wrote this script for free, and I just never gave up on it. And I actually gave it, I forced them to give it to David Chase at gunpoint. We were at the same agency, and all I wanted him to do was to take it to HBO. I didn't know he would ever offer me a job on the show. I didn't think, I'm the son of a Jewish doctor from you know, Hancock Park in Los Angeles. I don't know anything about the mob. And, and, you know, and so then I got the distinction of being labeled the first woman writer on The Sopranos. Yeah, there were other women writers there, most notably Robin Greene, but she is a hell of a lot more bloodthirsty than I am.